3 is about inverses of matrices and matrix equations. We will see together what we mean by the inverse of a matrix and how to find it for 2 by 2 matrices and for n by n matrices. Finally, we will solve some matrix equations by using the inverses of matrices. Recall يا شباب what we did yesterday. Yesterday I have introduced to you the identity matrix. It is n by n. طبعا all the matrices that we are going to work on this matrix are square matrices, n by n. Now, the identity matrix, it is a matrix that its main diagonal entries are ones and the other entries are zeros. This is the identity matrix. What is the importance of this matrix? If you multiply any matrix by this matrix, by the identity matrix, from the left or from the right, you will get the original matrix. So this means that the identity matrix, it is like the one for numbers. You know, when you multiply any number by 1, you will get the same number. Also, when you multiply any number by its inverse, multiplicative inverse, which is in the case of numbers, what is the multiplicative inverse in case of numbers, ya shabab? If you have 3, what is the multiplicative inverse of 3?
1/3.
The reciprocal. So in the case of numbers, it is so easy. It is the reciprocal. But in the case of matrices, the inverse or the reciprocal, it is not like that. It is not just like this is A inverse will be just 1 over A, 1 over 3. So this is not the case here. Because when you say 1 over a matrix, what is that? This is a number over a matrix. This is not a defined operation. So the question now that will be, what is the number or what is the matrix that if I multiply by this matrix, I will get the identity? Because if I multiply the identity by any matrix, I will get the matrix. This is our subject today. The question is, what is this inverse? It is not the identity over the matrix, or it is not 1 over the matrix. No, it is not the reciprocal at all. It is something related to the product that I told you yesterday. So we need a matrix that if we multiply it by using the multiplication of matrices, I will get the identity. This is also I showed you, Shabab. If you multiply any matrix, square or not square, if you multiply any matrix, just it is about, are you able to do the multiplication or not? Here you have 2 by 2. Here you have 2 by 3. You can do the multiplication. If you multiply any matrix by the identity matrix, you will get the matrix itself. You can check that, ya shabab. Look, if you multiply the first row by the first column here, what you will get? 3, and then you will get 5, then you will get 6, and so on. So you will get the same matrix, whether from the right or from the left. Now, we are here to talk now today about inverses. What is the inverse of the matrix? What is the inverse of A? In fact, the inverse of A, you have a matrix A. The inverse of A, it is another matrix, B. When you multiply them, you will get the identity. From the right or from the left. This is the inverse. So, if we have two matrices, two square matrices, n by n, and their product equals to the identity matrix, we say that B is the inverse of A, or also A is the inverse of B. So A is B inverse, and B inverse is A. Or let's say A inverse is B, B is inverse. So they are inverses of each other. And we write it like that, B equals to A inverse, or A equals to B inverse. This, of course, will tell you, Shabab, that the inverse of the inverse is the matrix itself. We will mention that later. The inverse of the inverse is the matrix itself. What is the definition now, the formal definition of the inverse, Shabab, that you need to know? The inverse of the n by n matrix, it is also n by n matrix that satisfy this relation. The product of the matrix with its inverse from the right or from the left equals to the identity. Now let's verify. We have here two matrices. How to know that they are inverses of each other? We need to verify that B is the inverse of A, or A is the inverse of B. How to verify that, ya shabab?
We multiply them.
We multiply them. If we get the identity, then they are inverses. If we didn't, they are not. Yes or right? Look, just multiply them from the right and from the left. Why we should it? Why we should do it from the right and from the left? We have to make sure that it is from both, because we need to check that A is the inverse of B, B is the inverse of A. Of course, they are inverses of each other. Also, ya shabab, in general, this is not equal. You know, the multiplication of matrices is not commutative, but here it must be. And not only that, it must be also equal to the identity. Okay? Now, the question is how to find the inverse. Let's start with the 2 by 2 matrix. How to find the inverse? If you have 2 by 2 matrix like A, B, C, D, the inverse is what? 1 over a number. This is 1 over a number. What is this number? This number is the product of the main diagonal entries minus the product of the another diagonal entries. And here what we will do, we will interchange the entries of the main diagonal, and we will change the signs of the another diagonal. What is positive will be negative, what is negative will be positive. There will be here a small problem, ya shabab. The small problem here that we will have is about this, the denominator. We have here something in the denominator. If this thing here in the denominator is 0, then this matrix has no inverse. Is there anyone of you, ya shabab, know what is this called, ya shabab? This is called the determinant. We will study it in 11.4. The determinants will be studied in 11.4, the last section in this chapter. So what we can say, this quantity or this number is called the determinant. Why they call it the determinant? Because it will determine if the matrix has inverse or not. If it is 0, if the determinant is 0, the matrix has no inverse. And in that case, we call it singular matrix. Let's see now how to find the inverse of 2 by 2 matrix for this 2 by 2 matrix. How to do that, ya shabab? The idea is here. Please, ya shabab, you have to know how to find the inverse of 2 by 2 because it is so easy and so clear. So to find the inverse here, what I will do, just I will say 1 over 3 times 4 minus 2 times 5, which is 10. And here I will interchange the entries of the main diagonal. 3 will take the place of 4 and 4 will take the place of 3. And here I will change the negative sign and the positive sign. What is negative will be positive, what is negative will be positive. And they are still, of course, at the same place. Now, this will be what? 12 minus 10, 2. 1 over 2, it will be a half. So we will have here a half times 3, negative 5, and 2, negative 4. You can keep it like that, or you can multiply, and you can put it inside. So you will have here 3 over 2, negative 5 over 2, and here you will have negative 1 and 2 without a half. You can do it like this or this. طبعا, when you multiply now, because here you need to verify how to check that what you obtain is the right matrix. How to check that this matrix is really the inverse. How to check it, shabab? Just multiply. Now, when you multiply, be smart, by the way. You can multiply here. Look, you can, this is A, this is A, this is A inverse. You can multiply. But look here, you can avoid working with fractions. How to avoid working with fractions? I think you remember, shabab, what I told you. For example, if you multiply 3 by a matrix A by a matrix B, it is the same if you said 3A multiplied by B or you said A multiplied by 3B. It is the same because this number, it is this derivative, the product. Revise the properties. So here we have this, we need to multiply, this is A, we need to multiply by this matrix, or indeed it is the same as you say that you multiply it by this, it is the same. By a half, 3, negative 2, negative 5, and 4. Now take the half out, ya shabab. take the half out, multiply 4, 5, 2, and 3, multiply it by 3, -5, -2, and 4. So easy now. No fractions here. But here, when you multiply, you have fractions. So what you will get if you continue, you will get a half. And this matrix, if you multiply it, 4, 12 minus 10, you will get 2, you will get 0, 0, 2. You will get, of course, after that, you will get the identity, which will lead to 1, 0, 0, 1. So what is the benefit of this trick? That you will avoid working with the fractions by using the properties. If you have a scalar multiplication, it is not an issue at all. What you have to be careful about, Shabab, is just keep the same order for the matrices. Don't change the order of the matrices when you multiply, because here it is A to the left, it should stay to the left. B is to the right, it must stay to the right. Clear? Now, how to find for 3 by 3 matrix, 4 by 4, 5 by 5, how to find the inverse in general of a matrix? The idea is so clear. It is, yes, it is long, a little bit long, but it is so clear. You need, Shabab, to remember what we did in 11.1. Do you remember what we had in 11.1? We had what is called the augmented matrix. What we do elementary row operations until we have, of course, here 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0. In the case of Gaussian elimination, if we're using Gauss-Jordan elimination, we should have also these are zeros, which is the identity matrix, by the way. We will do here something similar to that. If we have n by n matrix and we want to find the inverse of this matrix, what we will do, we will construct a large matrix 2 by 2n that has the entries of A here on the left and the identity matrix on the right. Then we will apply elementary row operations. We will multiply a row by a number, then add it to another number, and so on. We will do the elementary row operations that you remember from 11.1. To do what? To change the left, to change the matrix to be here on the left, and this matrix, we will have another matrix. Let me write it here. We have the matrix here. Next to this, we have the identity. What we will do row operations until we have the identity here on the left, and we will have new matrix here on the right. This matrix on the right, it is the inverse of A. Just like that. Here it is. You will have, you will start with the large matrix like this. Then you will do the row transformations or row operations until you have a matrix in this form. The B here, it is the inverse. Let's apply this for this specific matrix. Now we need to find the inverse. Then we will verify that it is the inverse or not. How to find the inverse of this matrix? It is a 3 by 3, by the way. By the way, also, I will show you in 11.4 a method how to find the inverse of such matrices. But for now, let me use the general method, because this method that I mentioned here, it works with every n by n matrix starting from 3 by 3 and above. For 2 by 2, you don't need it. For 2 by 2, it is so clear. You have very clear process. Now, what we will do, step number 1, we will put this matrix here on the right, on the left. Then we will, it is 3 by 3. We will write here I3. So what we did, we just write A and here I3. The process or the idea that we will work on this by using row operations until we have here what? We have I3 here and another matrix here. This matrix that we will have here, it will be the inverse. Okay? So what do you think? Do you remember the steps that we did in 11.1? We need this to be 1. It is 1. Thank you. It is ready. We need this to be what, ya shabab? 0. And this one, 0. Then this one, 0. This one, 1. This one, 1. 0, 0, 0. Let me use squares for ones and zeros for others. So this is what we want. So how to do that, ya shabab? We will use the same operations. So who can tell me, يا شباب, what to do to make this 0, for example? What we can do to make this equals to 0? What we can do, يا شباب, to make this entry equals to 0? Hello?
Multiply -2 in row 1 and plus row 2.
Row number 1 multiplied by -2 plus row number 2. You are right. Thank you. Also, I want also this to be 0. What I can do? Multiply row number 1 by what? By 3. Then add it to row number 2. Get ready, ya shabab. I will ask you about the operations. So please. So this is step number 1, ya shabab. You have to do it one by one. Start one by one. So we will start with this. So we will multiply the first row. You can do it mentally or you can write it here. -2, 4, 8, -2, 0, 0. Be careful. You need to do it for the 6 columns that you have here. Okay. So now what we will do, we will add this to the second row. Now this minus this 0 plus this 0. 4 plus -3, 1. 8 plus -6, 2. -2 plus 0, -2. And 0 plus 1 is 1. 0 plus 0 is 0. We change row number 2. We will do the same for row number 3. We will multiply by 3. Forget about these. Multiply now row number 1 by 3. So it will be 3, -6, -12, 3, 0, 0. Do it carefully. Now you will change, you will add it to row number 3. You will get 0, 0, 3, 3, 0, 1. Now, what is our next target, ya shabab, is to make this equals to 1 and this equals to 0. We are lucky, so lucky, because they are automatically be 0 and 1. Okay. Now, look, ya shabab, what is happening now? We the identity matrix is start being shaped here, and also the inverse start appearing here, but not yet. What is our next target, ya shabab? What we want next? We want this to be what? 1, and this to be 0, this to be 0, this to be 0. We cannot do that all at the same time, of course. We'll start one by one. So let's make this one. How to make this one, ya shabab? And please don't tell me that you will use row number 1 or row number 2, because
no, multiply by 1/3.
Just multiply row number 3 by 3rd. Try to avoid doing that if you will have so many fractions. So here we don't. In this case, it is 1 fraction, and khalas. The 3rd row, ya shabab, is ready. Do you agree with me? The 3rd row is ready. So if someone, if the question, if I ask you, if I give you this matrix, and I asked you about the sum of the entries of the last row in the inverse. So the question was, what is the sum of the last or the 3rd row of the inverse matrix? Here they are. Now the 3rd row will not be changed. Now this is the third row in the inverse. No need to continue. You will stop here and tell me that it is 1 plus 3rd, which is 2/3. Just like that. Nice trick. And this is usually what we will ask you to do. No need to do all the operations, because the idea is the same. Now, here we need to find completely the inverse. So we need to find, to make this 0, to make this 0, to make this 0. Any suggestions, ya shabab?
2 by the row 2.
2
plus
plus row number
1.
Plus row number 1. Yes, you're right. Multiply the second row by -2, and of course keep it as it is. لاحظوا يا شباب, row number 2 it is as it is. We will change row number 1. Now it will be, of course, now row number 1 is ready. خلاص. What is left is this. We need this to be 0. So what we will do, we will multiply the 3rd row
root 3.
-2 row number 3 plus R2. Ya shabab, do this always, this operation by this order to avoid any mistake. Be careful. Now, if you follow this process, always you will be in the safe place. لاحظوا يا شباب إنه finding here, what we did here now, what we have here, we have the identity, we have I3. So what is this? What is this? This is the inverse. طبعا you need to write at the end, the inverse is is this. This is the inverse. Notice, ya shabab, that we did here what? We did the same steps of what? Gauss-Gordon elimination. Do you remember? We have Gaussian elimination and Gaussian Gauss-Gordon elimination. Here we did the same for Gauss-Gordon elimination, but of course with a large matrix. What is the common mistake that the students do? They focus here and forget to do that for the whole 6 columns. Don't forget that you have here 6 columns. You need to do 6 operations every time. Now, how to check that it is the inverse? Of course, you can just do the multiplication. You can check now. If I multiply the first row by the first column, what is expected to have, ya shabab? 1. If I multiply the third row by the second column, مثلا, what is expected to have? The third by row number 2. So you will have 3, 2. So it will be in the third row and the second column. It is expected to be 0. Of course, from the right or from the left, you should have always the same. Let's take another example with another matrix. This is a matrix. Again, we will write this matrix here on the left. We will write the identity matrix on the right. We will do elementary row operations until we have the identity matrix on the left and the inverse will be on the right. If we can do that. Okay? So what we will do, ya shabab? First of all, notice that here we don't have 1. We need this to be 1. We need this to be 0. We need this to be 0. So what we can do? We can multiply row number 1 by a half. Is that a good option? It is an option, by the way. It is an option, but is it good or not?
No, I think minus -2.
Why it is not good option?
Because we will have fractions.
You will have a fraction. Then you need to use row number 1 to change row number 2 and row number 3, and this will make the operation so complicated. So try this option. Try to avoid this option. It is not an option. It is not a good option. What is the alternative option, Shabab? The best option here? What is the best option here?
To change the rows.
To change or interchange, replace row number 1, row number 3, or row number 2. By the way, this is not an issue at all in the elementary row operation, because you just have equations, you reorder them. So yes, this is correct. So we will interchange row number 1 and row number 2. Now we are ready. We have here 1. So now just I need here 0 and here I want 0. Now I want, ya shabab, someone to help me to do that. Who can I ask to do? Jawad, what should we do, ya Jawad? I want, ya Jawad, this to be 0. So what I will do?
I don't know.
Jawad, are you kidding, ya Jawad, or you are serious? You are serious about that?
دكتور كم عملية عندي أنا أسوي مرة واحدة؟
It depends on you. You are using now row number 1. Let me ask Jawad, first of all. Jawad, are you serious or you are kidding? This is not accepted, yeah, Jawad, at all. Yeah, Shabab, do you know that Jawad, he got the highest grade in the last quiz? He got 13. He is the one with the maximum grade. And he don't know how to do that. What do you think? How to explain that, ya Jawad?
I didn't focus in the last few lectures.
The quiz was yesterday. Okay, I will talk about this with you, ya Jawad, another time. Get ready. I may call you anytime. Anyone? Okay, who asked about how many operations I can do at the same time? It is not about how many. It is not about how many. It is about what you are doing. Now, I can use row number 1 to change row number 2 and row number 3, and that's it. I can use row number 1 to change row number 2 and row number 3. But I cannot change row number 2 at the same time and use it to change row number 3. Be careful. Be careful about the operations that you are doing.
كان أتغير.
The maximum number is 2 here. The maximum is 2 if you are using the same row. Here I'm using row number 1 to change row number 2 and row number 3. You cannot use row number 1 to change row number 2, then use row number 2 to change row number 3 at the same time. No. Okay? Follow the same process, ya shabab. Please, please follow the same process that we had since 11.1. The same process. We start by making this one, then these two are 0, then here 1 by 1. You have to be careful. You may use 2 operations, but make sure that you are using 1 row to change the other 2 rows. Okay? Now, what we said, ya shabab, here, Jawad al-Muallim, he don't know how to make this equals to 0. Anyone can tell me how to do that? This is a big question mark on Jawad. Because, ya shabab, I have discovered, by the way, a cheating case in the previous section, and it is a huge one. And of course, the sequences will be so huge. Okay, now how to make this equals to 0, ya shabab? Anyone?
-2 row 1.
We
Plus
will
2.
use, ya shabab, always what we do, we use row number 1 to change row number 2 and row number 3. This is always the process. Check what we did here. Check what we did here at the beginning. We used row number 1 to change row number 2 and row number 3. The same process. Now, what we will do, we will multiply, ya Jawad, row number 2, row number 1 by -2. It will be -2 plus 2, it will get 0. Now, to change row number 3, ya Shabab, what we will do, I want this to be 0. Again, I will use row number 1. I will just multiply it by -1. So it will be -1 plus 1, it will be 0. Is it difficult to know that -2 plus 2 is 0, ya Jawad? What to do to have that? Please, please, you will be under my eyes, ya Jawad. Be careful, wake up. Follow, please. Now, we are done. This is 1, this is 0, this is 0. Now, what we want, ya Shabab, our next target, it is either to make this 0 or this 1. It is not, the order here is not important. We need this to be 1, we need this to be 0. So what do you think? What can we do? To make this 1, طبعا خلاص, we cannot use, ya Shabab, row number 1 anymore now. Now, you can use row number 3, like multiplying row number 3 by what? If you want to make this 1, multiply it by -8, and it will be long operation. There is an easier option. What is it? Multiply this by what? Second row, multiply it by what? To make this equals to 1. Jawad, let me ask you, Jawad, this time. Jawad, I want this -7 to be 1. So I will multiply row number 2 by what? Jawad, are you here, Jawad?
Yes, I'm here.
I have here -7. I want it to be 1. So I will multiply row number 2 by what?
By -1. No,
Negative what? I will multiply row number 2 by what? To change this -7 to be 1. Hello?
I'm not sure.
You have to come to my office hours today, ya Jawad. Okay?
Doctor, -1 over 7.
Jawad, let me finish this issue. Jawad, are you going to come to the office hours today or not?
Yes, I will.
Okay. خلاص, because we need to proceed. So now here we have -7. I want this to be 1, ya Shabab. So what we will do?
-1 over 7.
We will multiply row number 2 by -1 over -7, the reciprocal of -7. Now, this will make, of course, if you multiply this by -1 over 7, we will get 1. Here we will get -21 over 7, -7, it will be 3. Here we have fractions, so this is what you have to be careful about in the next operations if you are going to continue. But look here what will happen, ya Shabab. We need this to be what? Now, we need this to be 0. Okay, so we have 0 here 0 here, we want this to be 0. So what we will do to have this 0? Anyone, ya shabab? What to use to make this? We need to change this row now. Which row we will use? Row number 1 or row number 2?
Row number 2.
2. Do not use 1, because if you use 1, you will get here not 0. Be careful. خلاص. So we will use row number 2. Just we will say row number 2 plus row number 3, and this will give us what? Row number 2 plus row number 3. This will give us 0, 0. 0, 0. Here you will have these numbers. No, now look here what happens, ya shabab. What we have here? What do we have here, ya shabab? We have 0, 0, 0. It is strange because we must here have what? It is supposed, ya shabab, to be identity matrix. We should have identity matrix like this, 1, 1, 1, 1. So it is impossible now to have here 1. So this is not 1. We have a row here consists entirely of zeros, and in this case we cannot obtain the identity matrix on the left. If you cannot have the identity matrix here, then you cannot have the inverse here. In this case, we cannot change the left half to the identity matrix, so the original matrix does not have an inverse. In this case, always when we have a row consists entirely of zeros on the left, then this means that the original matrix is not invertible. It has no inverse. By the way, we will see that in 11.4. What we will do to know that it is it has inverse or not, we will just find the determinant. If the determinant is 0, no inverse. There is no inverse. And this will happen, of course, if one of the rows are all entirely of zeros. Is it clear, shabab? So if you cannot obtain the identity matrix on the left, and impossible, khalas, because we lost now this one here, khalas. How can you get it back? You will not be able to do that. The properties of inverses of matrices. The inverse is unique, ya shabab. There is no two inverses for the same matrix. If you have a matrix, there is only one matrix. If you multiply it by from the left or from the right, you will get the identity. It is unique. The inverse is unique. The inverse of the inverse is the matrix itself. I told you about that. This is what is important. How to find the inverse of the product. The inverse of the product, it is not just you will distribute like the powers. No, be careful. What is it? It is the opposite. You will reverse the order. It will be B inverse equals to A inverse. Okay? So here it is. It is not distributive over the sum. You cannot say that the inverse of the sum is the sum of the inverses. It is not. The same for the difference. So what is it? How to find? If you have A plus B, you want to find the inverse. What you will do? You will find what is A plus B. Add A to B. Mathalan, you will get C. And then find the inverse of C. This is what you can do. Now, what is next is about how to solve the matrix equations. Now, if we have A and B are invertible, they have inverses, and AB equals to C. AB equals to C. Then what is A? What is B? How to solve for A? How to solve for B? Now, to solve this, ya shabab, let's solve it for what? What do you want to solve it for? Do you want A equals what or B equals what? Choose, ya shabab. What do you want? Do you want to solve it for A or for B?
For A.
For A. To solve it for A, what we should do, ya shabab? We should multiply both sides by what? By the inverse of B, but from the right. Why from the right? If you did it from the left, what you will get? If you multiply it like this, you cannot cancel now. It will stay as it is because it is not commutative, the multiplication. So if you want to cancel B and solve it for A, you should write or multiply from the same side that B is there. Now, B times B inverse, ya shabab, what is it? What is B times B inverse? the identity equals to CB inverse. Now A multiplied by the identity, it is equals to what? To A, any matrix by the identity itself. Here it is. So what is this? What is A? Here it is. This is A, CB inverse. Now let's see how to solve it for A. We have AB equals to C. How to solve it for B now, ya shabab? Who can tell me how to solve it for B? I want B at the end. So we will do what?
Multiply A inverse both sides.
From the left or from the right? It is not enough to say multiply both sides. From the
Left
left
hand
or
side.
from the right? From the right?
Yeah, and the left.
From the right and the left, we cannot do that at the same time. I have two sides. This is the left side, this is the right side. I'm asking about, I will multiply from the right like this, or from the left like this.
From the left.
From the left, it should be next. So I will multiply both sides by the inverse from the left. Now A inverse is the identity, and this will be A inverse C. This will be B equals to A inverse C. This is B. Be careful, ya shabab. If you said that B is C A inverse, this is wrong, because these are not equals. The multiplication is not commutative. The last one, I have mentioned it in the previous class, by the way. Do you remember the old exams that we have solved? When AC equals to BC, then A equals to B if C is invertible. If it is invertible, it has inverse. How to do that? You have AC equals to BC. We will multiply by the C inverse from where? From the right. Then you will have, of course, A by I equals to B by I. This is A equals to B. Any question about these properties, Shabab, because they are so important? They use, of course, in several cases. The last part of this section, Shabab, is about how to solve linear system. This is 11.1, Shabab. How to solve it by using the inverses. I advise you to use 11.1, Shabab, because in the 11.1 you will use augmented matrix, which is just 3 rows and 4 columns. But here you need to use 3 rows and 6 columns when you want to find the inverse. So step number 1, we will write, ya shabab, the equivalent form, but the matrix form. We will write here the matrix of the coefficients. Here, this matrix, it is the matrix of the coefficients: 1, 2, -3, -2, 3, 6, and so on. Here it is the matrix of the variable. Here is the matrix of the constants. This is, ya shabab, equivalent. I show you that in the previous class. If you multiply this row by this column, you will get this, and it is equals to 7. So you can go from here to here and from here to here. It is so easy. Now what you will do, ya shabab, we have A. Let me write it down here. What we have here, ya shabab, is this. We have A times X equals to B. How to solve it for X? Who can tell me? I want now X, ya shabab. Ana abra X and Y and Z. I want this. This is X. This is what I want. So how to find X, ya shabab? How to find X? How to find X? Ya shabab, remember what we did here. Idhkurullah, ya shabab. Remember what I did here with you. What we did here.
Multiply A inverse on left sides.
Multiply both sides by A inverse from the left. So important. If you didn't do it in the right way, it will not be true. Now A inverse by A, it is the identity. I by X, it is X, A inverse B. Here it is. If you said that X, it is B, A inverse, this is wrong. Be careful. It is here, by the way. I did it for you. Thank you, Shabab. Now, what you need to do now? We need to solve this system. Don't forget that we need to find what is X, Y, and Z. So now we showed that I have B. This is B. Had here B, Shabab. I have it. It is known. what is not unknown for me, it is A inverse. So I need to find A inverse. You know how to find the A inverse. هذه الA يا شباب. And this one, by the way, it is the same that we did in example number 4. So it is not here about finding the inverse. But if you don't have the inverse, you need to do all what we did in example 4. Now what you will do, just you will multiply A inverse by B. And this will give you, of course, this is A inverse, this is B. This will give you X, Y, and Z. So the X is negative 11, Y is negative 23, and Z is 7. Now let's, طبعا usually يا شباب this process is long. This is why I told you to use 11.1 is easier. But sometimes they will ask you to do that by using the inverses. If you have a question, it will be mostly 2 by 2, like this system. This is, by the way, 10.1. When you have a linear system of 2 variables. How to write this system in a matrix equation, as a matrix equation? You will write the matrix of the coefficients 2 and 3, negative 5 and negative 6. Then the matrix of the variable x and y. Notice that this is 2 by 2, this is 2 by 1. If you multiply them, you will have 2 by 1. This is 2 by 1, which is the matrix of the coefficients, of the constants. This is the constant matrix. Now what we will do, we will call this A, we will call this X, this will be B. According to what we did before, here it is, X will be A inverse B, not B A inverse, be careful. So you need to find the inverse, then multiply this inverse by what? By B. So what we want, ya shabab, we want now our X will be A inverse B. We need the inverse of A. You know how to find the inverse of 2 by 2 matrices, ya shabab. This is 2 and negative 6, you will interchange them. Then this is negative 5, it will becomes 5. This is 3, it will be negative 3. Now you will divide by the determinant. What is the determinant? Multiply the main diagonal entries, negative 12. Minus, this will be here. You need to multiply here, not there. It will be 3 multiplied by negative 5, negative 15, it will be plus 15. So you will have 3, 1 over 3. And this is the inverse. Now what you will do to find the matrix variable, the variable matrix, you will multiply the inverse by B. This is the inverse, and this is B. And you have to be smart, ya shabab, here. طبعا, what you can do to do this, what is the best way to do this multiplication, ya shabab? طبعا, you can multiply this matrix by this matrix, then multiply by third at the end. Or you can multiply third by this matrix, then the resulting matrix multiplied by this matrix. But there is a third option which is the best. What is it? What is it, ya shabab? Is to multiply this by the last matrix, because you know that this will make the calculation much easier. What we did, we applied the idea that when you have a number, a k, let's say k, multiplied by a matrix A, and this multiplied by another matrix B, it is, you can start multiply k by A, then multiply the result by B, or multiply A by k by B, multiply k by B, then multiply the result by A. It is called the associative property, ya shabab. Anyway, if you did that, you will get X is 30 and Y is 9. And this is the solution of the system, and this is the summary of this section. Mainly, you need to know what we mean by the identity matrix, what it does, what is the inverse, the definition of the inverse, how to find the inverse of 2 by 2 matrix, what are the properties of inverses, how to find the inverse of 3 by 3, 4 by 4, and how to solve a matrix equation. There are interesting exercises, ya shabab, in your book, like what I did in the previous quiz. I give you exercises in the quiz from your textbook. This is, for example, 4 by 4. You can do inverse 4 by 4 by the same way. Here also you have 4 by 4. You have systems here. You have even matrices with variables, how to know that they are, how to find the inverse, and how to know that they are inverses or not. Let's solve this together يا شباب. Now you have here A, B, and you have that AC equals to B. Then what is the sum of all the elements of the matrix C? In other words, he wants you to find what is C. The question is, what is C? This is the question. How to find C يا شباب؟ مين يقول؟ How to find C? How to find C?
multiply A inverse.
This is not enough. When you say multiply A inverse, it is not enough for me. What you should say correctly.
Multiply an A inverse of both sides in the left.
يا سلام عليك يا مازن. هذا الكلام. So multiply both sides by A inverse from the left. لأنه لو ما قلت كده راح تكون B inverse or A inverse. طبعا A في ال A inverse it will be I في C it is C. And you will have here C equals to A inverse B. So what? We need A inverse. احنا نحتاج ال A inverse. Let's do it together يا شباب. So what is A inverse? We need now this to be what? 7, 2, 4, 1 inverse multiplied by 6, negative 9, 0, and negative 8. Now, what is the inverse of this matrix, ya shabab? It will be 1 over 1 times 7 is 7, minus 2 times 4 is 8. Open brackets. Now here, 1 and 7, we will interchange them. This will be negative 2, and this will be negative 4. Is that right? This is the inverse. Is that correct? Now, this will be equals to what? This will be 7 minus 8, which is what? Negative.
Minus 1.
It will be negative 1, 2, 4, negative 7. I will multiply now by negative 1. 6, negative 9, 0, and negative 8. Now we will multiply, Shabab, the first row by the first column. What we will get? Negative 6. Is that right? Negative 6 plus 0. Then the first row by the second column, so it will be negative times negative is 9, plus it will be minus 16. Is that right? Check with me, ya Shabab. You have to be careful about these operations. I did a mistake in the previous class. 4 times 6, it is what? 24 plus 0, because negative 7 multiplied by 0 is 0. Now the last one, 4 multiplied by negative 9, what is it? Negative 36 plus 4 multiplied by negative, it is this. Now the negative 7 multiplied by negative 8, it is positive. Negative by negative is positive. 7 times 8, it is 56. Is that right? So what we will have now? Negative 6, negative 7, 24, and 20. So what is the sum, ya Shabab, of all these entries? It will be negative 13 plus 44. That's right?
33.
31.
One.
31. The answer is B. So, ya Shabab, it is about adding and subtracting integers. Just you have to be relaxed, you have to be focused, and of course, for the concept of 11.3 is here, like here. These few steps at the beginning, but after that, it is a matter of calculations. The idea is the same here, ya Shabab. You have A, you have B, you have X. You have AX equals to B. Then what is X? X will be what, ya Shabab, from here? X from here, it will be what? A inverse B. Is that right? Or X equals to B in A inverse. Which one is correct? Which one is correct? 1 or 2?
1.
1.
Because if you want to solve it for X, you will multiply both sides by A inverse from the left. So this is a very important point. Okay? So if you do that, خلاص, you know how to find the inverse. Of course, I will not solve it now because the process is clear. Just you need to find the inverse. This is A. You can find the inverse. Then multiplied by B. This is B. And what he wants, he wanted the sum of the elements of C. The same question, the same way that we did here. Okay? Let me go to another question, which is an important one. This is a very old question, but the idea is still, of course, repeated. You have two matrices here, A and B. And he said that these two matrices are inverses of each other. Then what is M? What is K? We have here M and we have here K. How to solve this question, ya shabab? How to solve it? Please tell me how to solve this.
We find the inverse of A.
This is the direct way. المقداد يا سلام عليك يا مقداد. يعني أنا عندي الA يا شباب. أنا عندي الA موجودة كلها numbers ما فيها مجهول ولا شيء مجهول. I can solve it. I can find the inverse. بعدين هذا الانverse I will compare it يعني. I will find the inverse. So I will have here 9 numbers. What the number that I will have here, it will be M. The number that I will have here, it will be K minus a half. This is one way. It is an option, but it is not the best option. There is another way. And it is much, much shorter and easier. What is it? What is the another way? Anyone know about that? Yeah, Shabab. They are inverses of each other. So what? So what is B? This matrix here, it is A inverse. So if I multiplied A by A inverse or A inverse by A, what I will get? I will get the identity. Is that right?
Yes.
So now if I take this matrix, which is of course 1, 2, 1, 0, 4, 1, 0, 0, 2, and I multiplied by this matrix, negative 1, M a half, 0, 1, 0, 2, negative 4, and K minus a half. If I multiply these two matrices, what I will get? They are 3 by 3. I will get the identity, I3. I will get 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Okay? Now, if I multiply, طبعا you can do that. You can do what? 9 multiplication every time. No need. Just focus on what you want. What I want M and K minus and K. So if I multiply the first row by the first column, I will lose M because M will be multiplied by 0. So what I will do, I will multiply the second row by the first column. And what should I do here? The second row, هذا second row يا شباب. The first column, so it is 0. So if I multiply the second row by the first column, I should get 0. So let's do that. So we will have what? Negative 2 plus M plus 0, because 0 multiplied by half will be 0, equals to 0. From here we have what? We have M equals to 2. Wow. So the answer is either this is not an option, this is not an option, this is not an option. So this means that the answer is B or C. How to know exactly which one? We need now to find K. How to find K, Shabab? What we will do to find K? If I multiply the second row by the third column, I will not get K because K will be lost. So what I will do, I will use row number 1. What do you think? Row number 1 is okay with column number 3. So I will multiply this by this. So what I will get? The first row, this is the first row, and the third column, this is the third column here. So I will get 0. So this means that when you multiply 2 by 1, it will be 2. 0 by negative 4, it will be 0. 4 by negative K, it will be 4 multiplied by K minus a half. This must be equals to 0. This means that 2 plus 4K minus 2 equals to 0. This means that 4K is 0, K is 0. So what is the answer? The answer is B. The right answer is B. Did you get the trick, Shabab, of this question? So if you can use the properties that you have to save your operation. Of course, you can do also the multiplication, but no need. Focus on what you want. Use all what you want, all what you have to find what you want. Thank you, Shabab. And if you have any questions, I will stop the recording and then I will